The yelling started at the city gate, boots slapping stone, a trumpet crying once, and then the heavy beat of men running along the wall toward the palace. Heat lay flat on Jerusalem, the kind that made dust stick to sweat, and word traveled faster than soldiers could press it down. Absalom had crossed the Kidron with a crowd at his back. He paraded with chariots and men who cleared the way. He would take the square by noon and sit in his father's house by evening. Servants slammed shutters and mothers grabbed children. Inside, guards packed what they could carry. David told 10 concubines to stay and keep the house. He looked once at the roofline and gave the order that kept the city from burning: open the gates and leave. Absalom was the striking son, his hair so heavy he cut it yearly and weighed it. He avenged his sister Tamar by killing his half-brother Amnon, then lived in exile. When he returned, he did not wait his turn. He set himself at the gate at dawn, heard complaints, and told petitioners their cases mattered while hinting the king had no time for them. He stole hearts in plain sight. When his circle was strong enough, he asked leave to fulfill a vow at Hebron. Trumpets answered his prayer. Messages ran. Absalom had made himself king. David had outlasted Saul and brought the ark to this hill. He took his household, his guard, and the men who would follow him into the open country. The column dropped into the Kidron and climbed the Mount of Olives. Barefoot, head covered, he went up weeping with the rest. Zadok and Abiathar followed with the ark. He sent it back with the priests and their sons to watch and send word. If the city fell, the ark belonged with the people. He prayed that one counselor's voice would fail, Ahithophel, the sharpest mind in any room, and then he saw an answer on the ridge. Hushai the Archite stood waiting, clothes torn. David told him to go back, bow to Absalom, and put himself where counsel would matter. If Ahithophel urged speed, Hushai would sell caution as wisdom. Jonathan and Ahimaaz, the priest's sons, would carry messages from a spring outside the walls. The king kept moving while the network formed behind him. Ziba, steward to Mephibosheth, met the column with donkeys and food and claimed his master had stayed behind hoping for a throne. David awarded him Mephibosheth's land on the spot. At Bahurim, a man named Shimei shadowed the march, cursing and throwing stones and dust. Abishai asked to silence him. David refused. Maybe the Lord had told him to curse, he said, and kept moving. He saved his strength for the fight that still mattered. Absalom entered Jerusalem and asked for counsel. Ahithophel answered with the cold speed of a man used to being obeyed. First, pitch a tent on the palace roof and sleep with your father's concubines in sight of the city. Make the split public and permanent. Then give me 12,000 men, and I will chase David tonight, while he is weary and scattered. We will kill only him and bring the rest back. Hushai told Absalom that this time speed would be ruin. David was a fighter. He and his men were bitter in spirit. He was hidden in a hollow or a field. If the first attack failed, rumor would say the prince's men were falling and late allies would melt away. Call up all Israel, Hushai said. The flattery worked. Hushai's warning moved by hands and risk. Jonathan and Ahimaaz were spotted outside the city and hid in a well, while Absalom's servants searched the house. A woman covered the well with a cloth and grain. The runners held their breath. When the searchers left, they climbed out dripping and sprinted for the river. Do not spend the night at the fords, the message said. Cross at once. David's band moved in the dark. By dawn, they stood on the far bank with a river for a wall. Behind them, Ahithophel saw what it meant. He went home, set his house in order, and hanged himself. That death was the hinge. Absalom lost the advisor who would have closed the trap. David gained a day and a barrier. At Mahanaim, across from ground Saul had once used, David turned a retreat into a defense. Shobi, son of Nahash, Machir, son of Amiel, and Barzillai the Gileadite brought beds, bowls, grain, honey, sheep, and cheese. Hungry men ate like they had been given back their lives. David divided the force into 3 under Joab, Abishai, and Ittai the Gittite. He wanted to ride with them. They told him no. At the gate he gave the order he kept repeating, "Deal gently with the young man Absalom." Every officer heard it. They met in the forest of Ephraim, ground that broke charges and swallowed men who did not know its turns. Fighting fractured into pockets as units lost each other in trees and gullies. The forest killed more than the sword. Absalom rode a mule under the thick boughs of a great tree. His head caught and held. The animal kept going. He hung alive between earth and sky. A soldier saw him and told Joab. The general asked why he had not finished it, then cut the talk short. Joab took 3 javelins and drove them into Absalom's body, and 10 armor-bearers closed in and struck him until he died. They threw him into a pit in the forest and piled stones over him. In the king's valley, Absalom had raised a pillar for himself, saying he had no son. The heap in the woods became his marker. Joab sounded recall and chose a Cushite to carry the news. Ahimaaz begged to run as well. Joab told him to wait, then relented. Ahimaaz took a flatter road and reached the gate first. David waited in the shade between the inner and outer walls and watched the ridge for dust. "Is the young man Absalom safe?" he asked. Ahimaaz talked about victory and a great tumult and claimed he had not seen what happened. The Cushite arrived and said it plain, "May the enemies of my lord the king and all who rose against you for evil be as that young man is." David went up to the room over the gate and broke, "O my son Absalom, my son Absalom, if only I had died instead of you," he said, and the wall that had heard his prayers heard that too. Grief threatened to turn victory into loss. Men who had fought hard walked back into camp like thieves because their king's sorrow made their win feel like a crime. Joab went straight at him with a soldier's logic. You were loving those who hated you and hating those who loved you. If you did not show yourself to your men that day, they would be gone by night. David washed his face, went down, and sat in the gate where a king belonged. The army held. The damage remained. David limped through the return, pardons and punishments, loyalties tested and mended. Mephibosheth met him with an uncut beard and torn clothes, swearing Ziba had lied. David split the property rather than rip that wound open on the road. Shimei begged forgiveness at the river and received it for the day. Barzillai, old and generous, walked the king to the Jordan and turned back to die at home. He returned to a house changed by a son's ambition. The chain that led to that tree held plain links. A prince fed on praise until it felt like destiny. A father who knew how to win wars could not keep peace inside his own gate. A counselor hanged himself when his advice lost its weight. A general ignored a king's plea to spare a son because he meant to keep a civil war from being fought twice. Every choice left a mark scaled to the hand that made it. It happened in heat and dust, under walls and in woods, and it stayed in memory. Thank you for listening to Divine Crime. Subscribe for more true stories from the most dangerous book ever written.